Once upon a time in the riverbelt state of Alaora, politics wasn't just a game of governance. It was war, fought with rehearsed speeches and draped in expensive agbada. As another gubernatorial election loomed, the air crackled with tension. Alliances were forged in shadows and broken in daylight. Whispers of betrayal spread like wildfire, and a quiet desperation settled over the land. At the center of it all was Governor Danjuma Kola. He was nearing the end of his first term, a term he'd won against all odds. For years prior, he was a political nobody, a man with no deep roots, no powerful godfathers to clear his path. His victory was so unlikely, people called it a miracle, but the elders in Alaora had a saying, miracles always come with a price, and this time, around, the signs were not pointing to another one. The opinion polls were brutal, all but screaming his defeat. Allies who once sang his praises were now defecting, their loyalty shifting like sand. The very youth groups that had danced in the streets for him now openly mocked him on the radio. Even within his own party, the leaders were divided, subtly hedging their bets and preparing for a future without him at the helm. In public, Governor Danjuma wore a confident smile, but at night, in the privacy of the government house, fear was his only companion. One evening, long after the last of the Abuja-bound politicians had departed, Danjuma slipped out. There was no convoy, no blaring sirens, just a single aide following him as his car drove into the dense, forested outskirts of a neighboring state. Their destination was the home of a man spoken of only in hushed, fearful tones, Baba Agan. They said he didn't just predict who would win power, he delivered it. Inside a dimly lit shrine, with oil lamps casting flickering, dancing shadows on the walls, Danjuma finally let his mask of composure fall. He poured out all his fear, his ambition, and his desperation to the old native doctor. I cannot lose this election, the governor pleaded, his voice trembling. Everything depends on it, Baba. Agan's response was eerily calm, almost bored, as if he'd heard this 1,000 times before. Power is never free, he stated simply. You will win, but you will promise. The promises were laid out, each one heavier than the last. Annual sacrifices to honor the pact, absolute silence about the true source of his victory, an agreement that the wealth he gained would never be shared recklessly, and finally a special offering, to be given when the time came, to seal the covenant for good. Danjuma hesitated, the weight of the demands settling on his shoulders, but his ambition was stronger than his fear of the unknown. The hesitation was brief. I agree, he said, his voice firm, and just as Baba Agan promised, Danjuma won. Against all logic, against all predictions, he secured a second term. The announcement sent shockwaves through Alaora state. Ballot boxes had mysteriously tilted in his favor. Legal challenges from his opponents were dismissed by the courts. His rivals, defeated and bitter, faded into silence. Celebrations erupted across the state. In churches and mosques, people gave thanks to God for the unexpected victory. Danjuma himself played the part perfectly, kneeling before news cameras, his hands raised to the sky in a show of humble gratitude. But far away, in his forest shrine, Baba Agan waited. Weeks turned into months. The governor made no visit. He sent no sacrifice. He fulfilled none of his promises. Danjuma began to rationalize his negligence, whispering excuses to himself in the dead of night. I'll go later. I'm too busy right now. This is politics, not spirits. My strategy won the election. Nothing will happen. It was just an old man's words. His wealth grew at an astonishing rate, but so did the gnawing fear in his heart. Slowly, the people of Alaora started to notice a change in their governor. The man who once proudly donated ambulances to rural clinics now avoided charity events. The leader who once spoke passionately about empowering the youth was now cutting funding to community projects. Civil servants' salaries went unpaid for months, while rumors of his foreign bank accounts growing fatter spread through the state. He has changed, the people would say to each other. He has become selfish, they whispered in the markets. But the truth was far more complex and sinister. It wasn't just selfishness. Every time he considered an act of generosity, a wave of unease washed over him. Every public promise he made to his people was a painful reminder of the sacred promises he had broken. His spirit was no longer free to serve. It was trapped in a prison of his own making, caught between suffocating guilt and paralyzing fear. His second term was anything but peaceful. It was the beginning of the end. Strange, debilitating illnesses would come and go, leaving doctors baffled. Horrific nightmares plagued his sleep. His most trusted allies began to turn on him, leaking damaging information and reviving old court cases. A mysterious sickness afflicted his children. One after another, his wife, once his vibrant partner, withdrew into a cold, desolate silence. The government house, once a symbol of his power, became a house of suffering. He sought help everywhere. Doctors ran countless tests but found nothing physically wrong. Pastors held endless prayer sessions. Imams recited holy verses over him, but nothing worked. The darkness that had taken root in his life could not be banished by medicine or prayer. One night, in a final, desperate act, Danjuma tried to return to Baba Agan's shrine, but it was too late. The old man's eyes held no sympathy, only a cold finality. "The debt has grown," Baba Agan said, his voice flat. "What you owe now cannot be paid with wealth or animal sacrifices." The collapse was swift and total. Within a year, his political influence evaporated. His family scattered, unable to bear the curse that hung over their house. The immense wealth he had hoarded became a source of torment, a constant reminder of the price he'd paid. It was a burden, not a blessing. When Governor Danjuma Kola died, there were no grand celebrations, no state honors, no sense of peace. His passing was marked only by the same fear that had consumed his final years, to this day. The elders in Alaora still tell his story to ambitious young politicians, a cautionary tale passed down through the generations. They warn them, do not let desperation push you into making covenants you cannot honor. Do not promise the spirits what your conscience cannot fulfill. Power that is gained through fear will always end in fear, and leadership that is seized without integrity can never truly give back to the people it is meant to serve. And, above all, they teach a simple, profound lesson: learn to accept defeat when it comes. Because some victories, as Governor Danjuma discovered, cost far more than they are ever worth. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more tales about the human condition. Stay thoughtful and stay safe.